Hello, and welcome to another episode of Character Forge. My name is Tyler Owens. I'll be your character smith, and joining me is my wonderful wife, Leigh, who will be our character artist. Today we're going to be building a male human. I've said before that Warlocks are my favorite class in D&D 5e. I just love how versatile they are. I've built Warlocks who are glass cannon spell slingers. I've built Warlocks who are frontline fighters. I've built Warlocks who are dedicated healers. It'd be totally viable to make a party entirely out of Warlocks. So today, we're going to be doing one such off-the-normally beaten path Warlock. I'm going to build a Warlock specifically around the idea of being a tank, a character designed to be at the front lines, taking damage, and keeping the enemies from stomping the squishies. With that in mind, let's roll up our stats.
We're actually in a campaign right now where there are 2 warlocks, and my rogue has a bodyguard who is a warlock. Of course, Tyler built him, so is it any flippin' surprise?
Okay, a 17. We're off to a strong start. 12. Okay. That's an 11. Average. Oh, wow. That is 4 6s. So that's an 18 no matter which of the 3 we take. It's not often you see that.
Where are you, bro?
Let's see. A 16. Why are the dice never this nice to me when I'm building an actual a character that I'm actually going to be able to use? And a 15. Well, the streak of 7s has been broken.
At least this isn't what you're rolling for next time.
Yeah.
Spoilers. Hashtag spoilers.
Okay. Well, as I said in a previous episode, I like to always have a negative modifier in at least one stat. So we're going to bump that 11 down to a 9. I'm not going to trade it to bump up another stat like I did for Grumka. Just because, I rolled so well for all of them. I don't need to bump any of them up. And part of me thinks that people won't believe me that that's what I rolled. I really hope that being honest and transparent about when I'm changing the results helps to build that trust that that's really what the dice were saying. Alright, let's see. Okay. So to explain how I'm going to be allocating the stats, I need to explain how the idea for this episode progressed. I decided that I'd like to make a shield warlock. A warlock who, a Pact of the Blade warlock who instead of a sword had a shield. And if you were paying attention in episode 0, you already knew this is a sort of thing that I might be doing. So when I was making notes about this episode, I titled the Google Doc I was making for it Shieldlock. And being the punster that I am, I immediately changed it to Shieldlock Holmes. And now I have to make him a private eye. So I'm going to be building a human and taking the variant where we get +1 to 2 stats, a proficiency of our choice, and a feat. And I'm going to be building a level 9 Warlock, so we'll get 2 potential stat increases from that. However, one of those is going to be another feat, so we will get 2 points to allocate from our levels. With all of that, our final stats are going to be Strength of 12, Dexterity of 16, Constitution of 9, Intelligence of 20, Wisdom of 16, Charisma of 18.
Quick pause. If our viewers are wondering why some of my drawings are all off kilter, it's because sometimes my tablet will resync slightly off. So for this and all future episodes, if you've noticed that my stuff is slightly off, that's why.
Yeah.
Sorry about the interruption, but I didn't want it to be confusing.
Yeah. Technology, the wonders of technology. It's why I always use pen and paper and like actual physical dice for D&D. Not that the technology doesn't work just fine, but
except for it doesn't.
Except for it doesn't. Okay, let's start with the backstory this time. We're going to call this guy Everard Holmes.
Everard? Like Eveerard?
Yep.
Holmes?
Yep.
Like Holmes?
Yes, like Sherlock Holmes. Because he's Shieldlock Holmes.
Because you're that kind of dork.
Yeah, I'm that kind of dork.
We like you anyway. I like you anyway.
Everard Holmes had a fairly standard childhood.
Oh, geez. No good story starts that way.
He was born to a moderately wealthy family who could afford to send him to boarding school. He enjoyed games of both dexterity and cunning. He watched his entire class butchered before his eyes. He read extensively, normal stuff. Okay, I suppose there's one thing in there that's not like the others that should be elaborated on. His favorite game was backgammon. Okay, so one ordinary school day, the children were surprised to find out that they were going on a field trip to a nearby mine to study crystal and metal deposits. On the way to the mine, however, they were beset by bandits. It appeared that Everard was their target because of all the children and chaperones, he was the only one taken alive. That evening, when the bandits were asleep, Everard managed to squirm free of his bindings, and he'd always been a little bit of a sickly child, so they didn't quite get the bindings tight enough. And so, he was able to get free of his bindings, and he silently slit the throats of each and every bandit with a knife that he took off of one of them. When the town guard showed up 2 days later, he was still kneeling next to the final bandit, hands clenched around the hilt of the dagger, a look of emptiness and horror in his eyes as he stared down at the blood covering them. He received the best therapy that could be given to him in the time period, and within a few years he could function in normal society again, almost as if nothing had ever happened. But to this day, Everard cannot hold a blade. And to this day, whenever he is in a fight and someone pulls out a dagger, he loses control of himself and will not stop attacking until that person is dead. Upon returning to some semblance of normalcy, Everard bypassed the normal schooling system and apprenticed himself to the greatest private detective that the realm had ever had, Torgarath Ironeye, a dwarf of unprecedented skill and unswerving discipline as a teacher. Young Everard learned quickly, until one day he even surpassed his master. When he had been working as a private investigator for about a decade, Everard was visited by an angel. The angel told him that a powerful celestial had taken notice of his determination to help the downtrodden, and wished to make a warlock pact with him to grant him further power to help the people. As a token of the pact, Everard would be granted the Blade of Light's Blessing, a sword of surpassing magical strength. Everard was touched at the offer, of course, but he shrunk back from the blade. Even a holy blade was still a blade. When asked if there was another weapon he could accept, he responded, "All I need to protect the people is a shield." It was a little unorthodox, but the Celestial agreed.
I'm just imagining, do you have something that's less pointy? I checked my pockets. Got this shield in my footlocker. Footlocker shield.
So that's Everard's backstory. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's get to some mechanical stuff for him. Okay, so fair warning here. A lot of what we're going to be doing is not strictly according to the rules. If you have a problem with that, well, too bad. I warned you in episode 0. It's too late to get off this train now. Before I inevitably forget, as a 9th level warlock with a -1 constitution modifier, we're going to tempt fate and roll for my health.
Why?
It's more interesting that way.
I guess he was a sickly child, so...
It's a 3, a 4, a 6, a 4, a 6, a 5, a 6, and an 8. So adding in the 8 I get for the first level and subtracting 9 for my Constitution modifiers, that gives a total of 41 HP, which is less than my level 5 Warlock that I'm actually playing right now. So 4 levels higher for less HP. So that's fun. Oh, and it's not like my Warlock that I currently have, who is more built to be hardy, drops constantly like a fly anyway.
He's kind of a glass cannon now.
And a little bit, but like...
He makes bad decisions, that's his problem.
Yeah, that's true. Still, Everard, as we said, is not a hardy guy.
Dude, your other Warlock's gotta hide behind my Barbarian more often, that's his problem.
Yeah. Maybe we'll talk about him some other time. that could be fun.
Back to Shieldlock.
Yes, back to Everard. For Everard's background, we're going to choose the Investigator variant of the City Watch background from the Sword Coast Adventure Guide. This gives us proficiency in Investigation and Insight, as well as 2 additional languages. It also gives us the Watcher's Eye feature, which allows us to quickly identify locations of guard or criminal significance, such as a city watchtower or a den of thieves. It's actually a little amusing. It makes the point of saying that we'd most likely be more welcome in the city watchtower than in the den of thieves, as if you wouldn't have gotten that from the name of the thing.
That's ridiculous. Why?
Let's see. As a level 1 Warlock, we get to choose 2 skills from Arcana, Deception, History, Intimidation, Investigation, Nature, and Religion. I'm going to take Arcana and History, and we're going to round off my skills with Persuasion from our human variant. We also get proficiency in Wisdom and Charisma saving throws. Okay, let's see. At first level, we also get to choose our otherworldly patron. If you're unfamiliar, where wizards gain their powers from study, and sorcerers have innate powers from how they're born or just, circumstances of their birth most of the time, warlocks get their powers through pacts with powerful beings. We're going to choose the Celestial, which is in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, because, that's what we explicitly said in the backstory. At first level, this gives us the Light and Sacred Flames cantrips for free. Light just does what it says on the tin. It makes light. Sacred Flames is pretty cool because essentially it makes it so that you still hit things that are behind cover. So like if somebody's trying to hide from you, you can just hit them with Sacred Flames. Let's see. We also get the Healing Light ability. This gives us a pool of D6s equal to 1 plus our Warlock level, which in our case is going to be 10. As a bonus action, we can use this pool of dice to heal 1 creature we can see within 60 feet of us. We can spend a maximum of our Charisma modifier of dice at any one time, so at any one time we can do up to 4. We get all of the dice back when we finish a long rest. So this is a little bit like a healing word, except we get D6s instead of D4s, and also it does not count as a spell casting. So whereas healing word you can cast as a bonus action, but in 5th edition you can only cast 2 spells if the second one is a cantrip. Since this Healing Light ability is not a spell, we could still do a full, something like Cure Wounds with our action, and then still use a essentially better version of Healing Word with our bonus action.
What kind of shield does he have? Is it a tower? Is it
it's a tower shield.
Tower shield. I kind of thought you'd go for that.
Yeah. let's see. As with all patrons, we also get an expanded spell list. So you, with each patron you choose, you get access to more spells that are kind of themed after that patron. Like if you take a devil, you get things like Fireball. With our Celestial, we get things like Cure Wounds. At second level, we get access to Eldritch Invocations, which are special abilities or modifiers for existing abilities that we can choose to specialize our Warlock. By 9th level, we'll have 5 known invocations. We'll pick those a little later. At 3rd level, we get a Pact Boon. We can choose to either take the Pact of the Chain, which grants us a somewhat beefed-up familiar, or we can take Pact of the Blade, which gives us a magical weapon, or we can choose the Pact of the Tome, which will give us more varied spells to cast. This is part of the reason why I love Warlocks so much, incidentally. Most classes have really only one major decision point, which is, which subclass to take. Warlocks have at least 2 if you're not counting the invocations. There's just so much flexibility to build such vastly different Warlocks, because you can choose, different beings with which you're making the pact, which gives you access to a whole bunch of different spells and different abilities from that. But then you can also choose what Pact Boon you get, which can, vastly change what your Warlock plays like. The same thing with your invocations. And that's just why Warlocks are able to be pretty much anything. For our Pact Boon, we're going to go with the Pact of the Blade. Now, normally, this can only be used to create a melee weapon, and we're going to be creating a shield instead. This is not rules as written. You'd need to check with your DM if they're okay with it. I'm going to take that's not what the rules say even further with this, though. The 2 feats that I'm going to be taking, because I mentioned I'm going to be taking the feat for being a human, and one of my 2 levels up is going to be a feat. I'm going to take Shield Master. That lets us use a bonus action when we take the attack action on our turn to try to use our shield to shove one creature within 5 feet of us, as well as add our shield's AC to Dex saving throws against spells and other harmful effects that target only us. And it lets us use our reaction to take no damage instead of half damage on a successful Dex save, when a successful save would have resulted in half damage. Everything here with Shield Masters is totally by the book. We don't have to worry about that one. The other feat, however, will need some DM approval. This feat is called Sentinel. As written, Sentinel allows you to drop a creature's speed to 0 when you hit them with an opportunity attack. It also allows you to use your reaction to make a melee weapon attack against a creature within 5 feet of you when that creature attacks anyone other than you who does not also have this feat. And importantly, it also makes it so that creatures provoke opportunity attacks from you even if they take the disengage action. Sentinel is one of the best feats D&D 5th edition has for trying to build a tank type character. It's almost really the only way to consistently get a tank. But you see the problem here. 2 of the 3 abilities of this feat specify that we have to be using a melee weapon, which technically speaking our shield is not. So we're gonna need DM approval to be able to have, hitting people with our shield, doing a shield bash, count for each of these different abilities. Which brings us to kind of the other hiccup with this whole build. 5th edition doesn't really have solid rules for shield bashing. Like, you can call the Shield Master ability of shoving someone as a bonus action when you take the attack action as shield bash, but I mean, it's not really, not in the sense I'm looking for anyway, not in the sense that a lot of, other game systems and video games use, where you're actually, damaging someone by hitting them with your shield. Most DMs online that I've, read about or talked to seem to agree that it would be an improvised weapon at that point, which, I mean, I guess. But then we have an interesting question on our hands. You see, in 5th edition, improvised weapons fall into 2 categories. Ones that are basically regular weapons and can be treated as such, like if you have a table leg and you're swinging it at someone, that's basically a club. You just use the rules as if you were fighting with a club. And then there's ones that do not resemble any weapons in form or use. This latter category only ever does 1d4 damage. Which, I mean, this character isn't designed to do a ton of damage, but it would be nice not to be relegated to just d4 damage at 9th level with our primary attack. I would try to argue for at least a d6 with the DM, but this is another part of the build that would need a lot of explicit DM approval.
Man, it is so hard not to be able to do damage in combat.
Yeah.
Like, that Korak character mentioned way back cannot really do damage in combat. It sucks.
Yeah. Let's see.
Kind of sit there, being like, okay, it's my turn, cool, I don't do anything. I roll persuasion, please stop attacking us.
The last thing that we get before we talk about our spells and invocations is another patron feature at level 6. From the Celestial Patron, we get the Radiant Soul ability. This gives us resistant to radiant damage and also lets us add our Charisma modifier to 1 damage roll for any spell with radiant or fire damage. So this is important for something like Scorching Ray, which you make, or Scorching Rays. You send out like different rays of fire and at higher levels. And this ability only allows you to add your Charisma modifier to 1 of the rays, not to all of them. With that, let's pick our invocations. The first one we're going to take is Armor of Shadows, which we're going to reskin to be Armor of Light, because we have a Celestial. This allows us to cast mage armor on ourselves at will without expending a spell slot or material components. That's going to allow us to have an AC of 19. That's 13, because it's calculated as 13 plus your dex modifier, and then we also have a shield, which altogether will give us 19. For our second invocation, we're going to take Eldritch Sight, which allows us to cast Detect Magic at will without expending a spell slot. That's going to be, nice for our investigator to be able to see when there's magic around. For our third invocation, we're going to take Eyes of the Runekeeper. That allows us to read all writing. Again,
That's so cool.
I know, right? Let's see. For our fourth invocation, we're going to be taking Eldritch Smite. This allows us to expend a Warlock spell slot to deal an extra 1d8 per spell slot level of damage and knock prone a creature that we hit with our packed weapon. Again, well, I guess, this is fine in terms of homebrewing because we've already had our DM agree that we can use a shield as our packed weapon. So, and it doesn't say melee weapon here, it says packed weapon. So once we have approval for the shield as our packed weapon, we're good. Our final invocation we're going to take is Improved Packed Weapon. This allows us to use our packed weapon as a spell casting focus, which is nice. And it increases the range of things we can summon with the feature to include ranged weapons. Still no shields, though, so there really is no way to make it shields in the rules as written. And it also makes the weapon have a +1 to attack and damage rolls. Here again, I would try and tweak it with the DM. Because we have a shield, a +1 shield, if we just got a magical shield, would just have an extra AC rather than extra damage. So I would try and build it with the DM so that it's the shield, instead of having +2 AC, is +3 AC. which is why I calculated the AC at 19 earlier rather than 18, if you were following along with how the build was going. Again, your DM's discretion is required here. With those chosen, we now move on to spellcasting. Warlocks are interesting as spellcasters. They're like sorcerers in that they have a smaller pool of spells that they know, but they don't have to worry about preparing spells. They just always have all of their spells available to them. What differentiates them from sorcerers is that while sorcerers regain their spell slots at long rests, like pretty much every other spellcasting class, warlocks regain their spell slots during a short rest. But to compensate for that, they have much fewer spell slots. They also only have one kind of spell slot. Whereas all the other casters, you'll have some first level slots, some second, some third, and so on. Warlocks only ever have one spell slot available to them at a time, which increases over time. As a 9th level warlock, we have access to 2 5th level spell slots per short rest. So every short rest we can only cast 2 spells that are not cantrips, but they're 5th level spells. Even if we do something like Cure Wounds, which is a 1st level spell, we will always cast it at 5th level, which means it'll be doing a lot more healing than if we did it at 1st level. And again, we regain these at short rests rather than long rests. So kind of the thing about it is, like, warlocks are built to burn through your spell slots, whereas other casters, you kind of have to, like, ration them out because, you know, they have to last all day. Warlocks, you burn through all your spell slots, and then, you know, you have your short rest after combat, and then, you know, you can burn through all your spell slots again. But, you know, there are trade-offs to them. It's never really been... Well, that's not true. In this past campaign we had with my warlock that we mentioned earlier, he was not able to try to fireball the person he was fighting because he had already used both of his spell slots trying to get that person to insult a dignitary so that the dignitary would have them, you know, thrown in jail or whatever.
He makes bad decisions.
He makes so many bad decisions.
He makes all bad decisions. That's not true. Lots of our other group makes bad decisions too.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how warlock spellcasting works. As a 9th level warlock, we also... So I said, yeah, we have the 2 5th level spell slots per short rest. We know 3 cantrips and 10 total spells. And because of the way that you learn spells in D&D 5th edition, you can only learn spells of the slot that you... maximum level up to the slot that you can cast. And you can only replace 1 spell each time you level up. So because of this, we can know at most 2 5th level spells, 4 4th level spells, and 4 3rd level spells. We can also, of course, trade any of those spells down for lower slot levels if we just decided not to always have the highest level slots we could. For instance, we could have like 6 4th level spells if we don't take any 5th level spells. So we are going to take Wall of Light for our 5th level spell. Wall of Light is pretty cool. It's not like most wall spells because you actually can pass through the Wall of Light. It just does damage to you if you pass through it.
So it's like a wall of fire. You can pass through it. Doing it might be stupid, but
yeah. There's actually also a kind of weird little like rules decision that you would have to make with Wall of Light, because it gives you dimensions, like maximum dimensions for the wall, and it gives you them in terms of height, width, and length, but like it also says that you can orient the wall however you want, and it's like 5 feet by 10 feet by 60 feet. So could I, for instance, like make that 60 feet like the 10, could I, swap the 5 and 10 so it's only 5 feet tall instead of 10 feet tall, but it's now 10 feet wide and 60 feet long? It's unclear. Anyway.
Every DM will have an opinion on an unclear rule.
Yeah. Let's see. For 4th level spells, we're going to take Guardian of Faith. Guardian of Faith is pretty cool. You essentially, you call down this, like, angel guy with a big sword, and anytime somebody enters a square next to him, they have to roll a saving throw, and if they fail the saving throw, they just take 20 damage. There's no roll for it. They just straight 20 damage. If they succeed on the saving throw, they take 10. And the Guardian stays there until it's dealt a total of 60 damage. So that's a little unorthodox, because there's no rolling for damage with that spell. Let's see. For our 3rd level spells, we're going to take Counter Spell, Remove Curse, and Magic Circle, which are all spells that we've either talked about or are self-evident based on the name of the spell. For our 2nd level spells, we're going to take Hold Person, and Misty Step, which lets you teleport. I figure both of those are good for our Investigator. And for our 1st level spells, we're going to take Cure Wounds, Hellish Rebuke, which, if you don't know, Hellish Rebuke, essentially, when someone hits you, you can use your reaction to cause fire damage to them as sort of like, hey, how dare you hit me?
Celestial doesn't have a problem with him taking Hellish Rebuke?
No, I mean, that's just the name of it. It's like, Celestials can rebuke things for hitting things, too. Yes, they can. And for our last spell, we're going to take Protection from Evil and Good. Which, again, for our investigative purposes, it's going to help us get out of tight spaces and, and all that. Run away when we've stuck our nose in somewhere where it doesn't belong. Which just means we need the 3 cantrips. We're going to take Blade Ward, which gives you resistance to piercing, bludgeoning, and slashing damage until your next turn. It's kind of like... It essentially gives you the barbarian's damage resistance when they're raging. Then we're going to take Booming Blade. Booming Blade's an interesting cantrip. What it does is you make a melee attack, which, again, it's debatable whether our shield bashing counts for this. But if our DM has let us get this far, I have a hard time believing that Booming Blade is where they're going to draw the line in the sand. So you make a melee attack against a creature, and if you hit them, then the attack does extra damage to them, extra thunder damage to them, and it also makes it so that if they move willingly before the start of your next turn, they take additional thunder damage. So kind of how this would work with our Shieldlock is you use, on your turn, Booming Blade. You hit somebody with the shield. As part of that attack from Shieldmaster, we can try to shove them 5 feet. So if you successfully do that, we've done the damage from the shield bash, the extra thunder damage from Booming Blade. We've pushed them 5 feet so that if they want to attack us again the next round, they have to move, which would trigger the Booming Blade to go off and deal even more thunder damage. So it's just a really great... And then, we also then, with all of this, have the sentinel feat, which if they try and ignore us and just go to somebody else, we can a lot of times get that opportunity attack, which would reduce their speed to 0. So Booming Blade's just a really great spell for this build. And we get one more cantrip. Let's do Create Bonfire. Which, in addition to just being able to, create a bonfire for, like, camping and stuff, actually is, like, a damaging spell if you create the fire in the space that somebody is.
Okay, but how adorable is that? Where he's like, I need to get the film noir thing going. Alone in the forest, hearing noises of the birds, I knew that I would have to be able to make camp for the night. Creates bonfire, sits down.
Yeah. With that, we are done with Shieldlock Holmes. Thanks once more to our character artist, Leigh. We'll throw up here the finished product of our wonderful Shield Warlock.
If you like my art, you can follow me on Instagram. It's Leigh J. A. Owens or at Read the Wordsmith.
And we'll put links to this stuff in the description for you. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Thanks for watching. If you did enjoy, don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss out on next week's episode, where we build a rogue whose least trouble is the law. Until next time, keep those forges lit.